Hey everybody, it's Joe Greco with Greco Arcana, and today we're going to take a look at the nines of the tarot. Actually, before I do that, let me put this on Do Not Disturb. All right, there we go. Okay, so what we have here is we have the nines of the tarot deck. So we have the nine of wands, the nine of cups, the nine of swords, the nine of pentacles. We have the hermit, and we have the moon. Now, the moon is the 18th card. And if you've been following this channel, you know in the tradition that I've been taught 1 plus 8 reduces to 9, and you're going to see how these all fit in together. Now, when people talk about the nines, they're usually talking about culmination. And that's true because the nines are very close to completion. But I want to take it, I usually take it to a little different angle. And that's because a lot of times when I hear other readers talk about the nines, that culmination sounds a lot like completion. I think the two things kind of get mixed together. So that made me like look a little deeper at the cards. And the angle that I've come to when I draw these cards is that the nines are cards of solution. All right, they're not the final completion itself. That would be the 10. But they are the moment right before completion, when the element itself has found its answer. So the nines are what happens when fire, water, air, earth have reached the door of completion and discovered the only solution available to them before they become fully manifested in the tens. And this is important because after the tens, the element begins to move through the court cards. So the nine is definitely not beginner energy. It's not raw energy. And it's definitely not the confusion that you see or the activity that you see at the beginning of the paths, right? The nine is very mature. The nine has been through something. It's been through a journey. The nine has experience. The nine is the element near the end of the number journey, and each nine is going to show us the solution that that element requires be produced. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to start with the nine of wands. Of course, all wands are fire energy. So we got passion, desire, inspiration, action, spirit. And we have the nines, which I said often read as culmination, and they are. But we're going to look at them as solution. They've been through the preliminary stages and they are about to birth the completed tens. Okay. So, what is the solution for fire energy? The Nine of Wands is the solution of endurance, of discipline brought into this fire energy. Fire burns fast, but it has little staying power, right? Desires change, inspiration wanes. But this guy right here, he's showing the effects of endurance applied to his fire. The Nine of Wands is saying, I know what this costs now, and I'm still here. Okay? That's the mature solution of fire. Early fire wants excitement. Immature fire, it wants conquest. But mature fire knows that most meaningful victories, they're not going to happen in one heroic explosion. They're won by persistence, okay? By courage, courage after injury, by keeping the flame alive when that inspiration has already passed. Now, for planetary correspondences, the Nine of Wands is the moon in Sagittarius. Now, the moon, it doesn't have any special dignity in Sagittarius, okay? Not in any traditional system. So we have this moon energy here, which is like instinctive. It's instinctive itself, right? And you're going to see how a lot of this keeps tying in. And we have the moon here, right? That instinct is based on all that watery energy of like memory and emotion, habit, and like memory, like not just the mind's memory, but like the body's memory, the soul's memory. And it's the moon in Sagittarius. So Sagittarius, on the other hand, is the sign of the archer. It's fire. It's an archer, it's direction, it's quest, it's distance, right? It's vision. Like what are things that you associate with the archer? It's a search for meaning. So in the Nine of Wands, we get the moon, the vulnerable, kind of remembering, instinctive self, placed inside Sagittarius, the sign of questing and meaning. In a negative dignity, the Nine of Wands can become paranoia. So when I'm reading this card, if I'm reading it in the Rider Waite system, if I read it reversed, I'll tend to think of stuff like paranoia. If I'm reading it in the Golden Dawn Ritual Tarot deck, if it's kind of ill-dignified by the elements around it, then again, I'll think of it as like a paranoia. It can become that. That fire energy can become like being always on guard. It can become the person that says, I've been hurt before and like I trust nothing. Okay. But as a solution, it says something higher. I've been hurt before. I'm still here. I know how to stand. This is my work. And that's the difference. Okay, so let's move to the next solution card, the Nine of Cups. The Nine of Cups, I'll just give you the planetary correspondence to start. It's Jupiter in Pisces. And that's a very different situation astrologically than the Nine of Wands, because Jupiter is in its domicile in Pisces. Jupiter, this is a strong placement. And when most times when you think of Jupiter, the word expansive comes up the most. Generous, abundant, faithful, like all these blessing oriented ideas. And Pisces is a mystical energy, right? It's devotional, it's imaginative. When I think of Pisces, like because it's a water sign, I think of different bodies of water. And Pisces, as far as water energy to me, is like the ocean. It's not a pond, it's not a clear lake or a stream or a river. It's oceanic. Okay. So Jupiter in Pisces is powerful. Okay. And I wanted to do that first because it kind of explains why the Nine of Cups is often called the wish card. But here again, we're going to talk about the Nine of Cups is water, that watery energy, that water element near its completion. Okay, and it's the solution. So it's the emotional element reaching its mature solution. And what is the solution of that watery energy? To me, it's satisfaction. Water begins as a desire. It begins as like a longing, like emotional attraction, grief, love. But by the time water reaches the nine, it it's finding out what's fulfilling it. Like he's already asked the question of what fulfills me, and that is why they are all on display. They're above him. Okay, that's the Nine of Cups. The card is the solution of emotional fullness. The cup has stopped chasing as it progressed. Okay, and now it's receiving. So this person has come to a place of inner satisfaction, or at least it's passing the test of satisfaction. And because Jupiter is dignified in Pisces, this card has the feeling of abundance, of blessing, of emotional generosity. It's the soul surrounded by cups, by feeling, by pleasure, by spiritual and emotional richness. Okay. I've noticed when this card is drawn that most times the conversation, that fulfillment that we're talking about is something that's on full display with the person. Okay. So in my head, like my one term that I think of when I draw this card is having your heart on your sleeve. Like this is the kind of energy that's applied to the stuff that you wear emotionally on your exterior. Okay. Now, every card has a negative dignity. And when I see this card show up reversed, I see shame or mostly shame, mostly sometimes indulgence, um, or like convincing yourself that something's true just to comfort you. Um, you know, people engaging in pleasure and using and treating that like it's fulfillment for them when maybe it's not. So Jupiter and Pisces can be beautiful, but it's expansive in the ocean. The ocean is already a lot, right? An expansive ocean is a lot, a lot. Okay, so now let's move to the Nine of Swords. All swords are the element of air, which means they represent the mind, thoughts, communication, truth, clarity, and all of those things. Okay. And the planetary correspondence in the Nine of Swords is Mars in Gemini. And I just covered this card. So if you want, you should check that one out because I went more in depth into this. Mars in Gemini is an interesting energy, and that's why Pixie. I don't know if A.E. Waite came up with the idea for the actual illustration or if Pixie did it herself, but that's why this illustration makes so much sense to me. Mars wants action, right? Mars is a very clear energy. It's an energy of clarity. It's action. It's energy. It's an Roman emperor conquering to unify, right? Like Mars is all about decisiveness, and this is Mars in Gemini, the literal sign of duality. Okay, so duality in the mind, in the intellect, in the ego, in your thoughts and in your mental programming. This is the opposite of what Mars energy would normally represent. So Mars in Gemini is kind of a wild energy. And that an easy way to identify the card is that that battlefield that Mars is looking for can be in the mind. All right. And I think that's why people expect this card when it's drawn to be like a really brutal card. And I get it. It looks that way. But what do we actually have here? Right. So we have the nine swords, and they're just flying through the air. And anytime I talk about this card, I talk about the Eight of Swords. The Eight of Swords, the swords are stabbed into the ground. They're in the manifested reality. They're in your history. They're in who you are, right? Like, and in the 10 that comes after this, they're basically running right up your chakra centers, right? Like they're in you. They have finished you. They have changed you. They've ended your cycle. Here they're not stabbed into anything at all, right? So you can read that as that they go on forever, which in a scene that looks like torment could suck. But to me, I read this as they don't have any purchase. These are imaginary, okay? And they're not necessarily an imaginary bad thing, okay? Air, we've been talking about solving, right? How does air, how does the intellect and truth and all of that, how does it solve before the 10? With awakening, with realization. Okay, that's what's happening here. That's an awakening. Whatever, when this element started in the early days of the one, the ace and the two and the three, and as it developed through the four and the five and the six, and as it was finding needs for modification and harmony over and over again, what wound up happening was it created an awakening, a self-realization that changed the person. Okay, and this is the card when that's you're realizing you can't go back. You know something new, so you are something new. Okay? The mind can be much more comfortable with duality. Right? That's why Gemini is a great sign for the mind. With indecision, with not having to view something with complete honesty. Okay? But here we have the swords. the swords are getting all the way to the threshold of 10 of completion, right? And with that, self-realization and an awakening just isn't going to be denied. Okay, so I don't see this as a negative card. I've said this before. Most times when I read it for people, they expect like the worst, and then, but I just don't see it that way, and it because I haven't seen it play out that way when it's been drawn, at least by me. Okay, now when it's ill dignified, it represents the one thing, the one vice that a mind that's about to hit that threshold of completion, the one vice it cannot indulge in, and that's denial. This, to me, when this is in reverse, this is a card of denial, 100%. Okay. All right. Nine of Pentacles, one of my favorite cards in the entire deck. Pentacles represent the earthly, right? They represent the manifested realm, the physical world. So they represent your labor, but they represent the experiences that you have here, the touch, the smells. The pentacles are like your wealth and your assets, they're your home. This is your experience on earth. Okay. And this is what makes this card, the planetary correspondence here is really what makes this card so awesome to me. Um, it's it's Venus in Virgo. Okay. And the reason I say that's fascinating is because in a lot of the traditional systems of tarot, Venus is in her fall in Virgo. Okay. Venus rules Taurus and Libra, and Venus is exalted in Pisces, right? Venus is in full fall in Virgo. So what does that mean? Well, what does Venus want? Venus is the card of harmony, okay? And harmony is beauty. So it doesn't just want beauty out into the world. It wants to see beauty, it wants to receive beauty, it wants to give beauty, right? There's a harmony of beauty there. And Virgo, Venus and Virgo, Virgo is analytical. It's discriminating, practical, right? It's exacting. It's the time of harvest. Man, if you didn't get the harvest right in your community was screwed. Okay? So you want to talk about a time when the exacting needed to be perfect, when the practical application had to be perfect. It was the harvest. Okay? So Venus in Virgo is not like Venus getting to recline on a velvet couch being fed grapes. The typical how we view Venus energy in the tarot, right? Venus in Virgo is beauty, but through a discipline. It's pleasure through a refinement, okay? And it's abundance, but through cultivation. That is exactly the Nine of Pentacles. Okay. This is Earth near its completion, and Earth's solution is appreciation. Okay. Not sloppy pleasure or like fantasy, like abundance, we all know that most people that have can never have enough, right? So it's abundance is a fantasy, and it's not pleasure. Okay. It's cultivating an abundance, but of appreciation. The figure in the Nine of Pentacles stands in the garden, right? Because the garden has been tended. The goddess, Venus, right? This is the goddess in the garden, okay? The goddess in the garden. The goddess is standing in the garden, but the garden is Virgo, the virgin. So these experiences, it's tended, but these are precisely natural, right? Virgin is untouched. This is an untouched garden. This is precisely natural. And what is Venus doing? She is enjoying and she's seeing and she's experiencing the beauty in every single part of this. Okay. So even though Venus is in fall in Virgo, that actually helps us understand this card. Harmony is not the nature of harmony isn't the physical experiences don't aren't necessarily constantly harmonized, right? She can't just luxuriate. Like this is the manifested world. This is the physical world. Some smells aren't great. Some animals might be dangerous. Some experiences in the physical world are going to be hurtful or uncomfortable. But what the goddess is doing is she's finding harmony by appreciating each and every one of those experiences. Every bit of the physical and manifested world, she's appreciating. It's Venus, so it's an elegance, right? But it's an elegance through her own internal discipline. But again, every nine has kind of a shadow. And when Venus in Virgo, when the Nine of Pentacles is ill dignified, I think of like the isolation of a walled garden, right? So only spending time doing things that make you comfortable or that are easy, okay? Refining in that direction can actually become separation. Okay, so to recap the minor arcana here, we'll just step back. The Nine of Wands is the solution of fire, which is endurance. Nine of Cups, solution of water, satisfaction. Nine of Swords, the solution of air, awakening or realization or self-realization. And the Nine of Pentacles is the solution for earth, appreciation. So each element now has reached the doorway of completion. Now, let's get into the major arcana that also represent this nine. And we start with the Hermit. Okay. Now, here we have a direct correspondence because the Hermit is associated with Virgo. Okay. But the correspondences, the planetary correspondences take a turn when it comes to the major arcana because um, Virgo, it's Mercury in Virgo. Mercury rules Virgo, so therefore it's Mercury in Virgo. Okay. Um, so we have appreciation still, right? But now it's through Mercury, it's through direct observation. And the hermit, he's lighting his own way, he's finding his own truth. He's walking a path that isn't lit by some celestial luminary, but his own lamp. Okay. And I don't want to go super in depth with the major arcana cards because they'll get their own videos eventually. But the hermit is finding his own way. And if you notice, he's not using some map drawn by others to navigate it. And he's not using a boat built by others or a mount, right? He's navigating with a walking staff. He's under his own power. When I draw the hermit in a reading, I think of seeking, searching, trusting your own path, finding answers on your own. Okay, so how does the hermit now link to all these nines? Okay, the solution to your problem is ineffable. It can only be uncovered by you because the solution is yours alone. You have to find it within yourself. When the hermit comes up, it is an experience that is unto you and you alone. What you're going through requires an ineffable solution. Okay. Like all cards, the Hermit also has a less dignified uh, ability to occur, right? Reversed. And to me, that represents like isolation, self-delusion, sometimes just solitude, or not trusting your own conclusions. Okay. And now here we're going to see a bunch of tie-in. Okay. So that leads us to the moon. While the hermit is walking a dark path by his own light, the moon represents the dark path. Okay, so instead of your gnosis being the guide, here we have your intuition as your only guide. And of course, interestingly enough, the moon represents Pisces, right? So we can go back to the Nine of Pentacles here, which is Venus in Virgo, Venus who actually rules Pisces. Okay. And Virgo, and then Virgo, and now Pisces. So you kind of see how it all comes together here. All right. So when I draw the moon, I read it as most people do as mystery, as a dark path that you're going to have to navigate with your own intuition. The moon doesn't create any light, it reflects it. And that's all you'll have, right? There's no direct light. It's not the sun beaming into every corner, just demanding you see the truth and seeing everything for what it actually is, that solar energy. Okay. Um, there is no direct light from the moon, right? So that means that there's no direct truth. There's no direct understanding on this journey. You just have the reflection of ideas off of your own watery surface. Okay. The moon links with the nines by offering you a path to a solution. You must walk a path that will be dark, and you're going to walk that path alone. I hope you guys like this. These are the nines in Hermetic Tarot. If you found this interesting, drop me a like or a comment. And if you'd like to get a reading by me, drop me a comment, and I would love to set one up either in person or Zoom, depending on where you happen to be. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.